Hello everyone and welcome to a game here on Daybreak. I'm gonna go ahead and get this game started. Excuse me as I set everything up a little bit more and get in a comfortable position for you guys. Now, this game is going to be between Binary Wompbeatz versus Dignitas Select here on Daybreak. If you guys were watching the MSI Battlegrounds, you may have seen this game. Seen this game reviewed by Gwyn and Day9. I wanted to also do a little bit of a review on this game as well. One, because I didn't get to see the game. This was actually in the losers brackets, I believe. Select and Wompbeatz. So it wasn't actually cast on the main stage, but it was one of the more entertaining games and really showcased the new Zerg Queen and how effective it is. Now, one of the things that is true in StarCraft 2. Let's go ahead and talk about the starting locations first. Select at the 1 o'clock position as the blue Terran. Meanwhile, Wompbeatz, Binary's Wompbeatz as the red Zerg at the 7 o'clock position. Only 2 spawning locations here on Daybreak. Pretty much the other, both players know where the other already is as this game does get underway. Now, one of the things that Day9 said that I really agree with was it's not just a matter of the composition of units and your army size and what units you have. It's also the path in which you use to get there. Now, everyone wants to have a 200 food army, but how you get to that 200 food army and how you get to that particular composition is really important. Now, because of the Queen upgrade, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you know, the Queen upgrade, it's just really good early game. And you know, it doesn't have that much effect on the late game. As true as that is, as much of an impact as queens have in the early game, because they are effective in the early game, it makes them better in the late game. The reasoning behind that is more Zerg players should have more queens late game. If it is a good unit to have in the early game and good StarCraft 2 players don't lose units, then it is, you know, it suffice to say you can have a lot of queens in the late game, and it's not going to sacrifice nearly as much. Now, a lot of players before were using Zerglings as a mineral dump, as Zerglings are a cheap unit that you can mass up quickly and are fast and getting across the map. They're not, you know, they're not the best unit out there, but they're good for their cost. Now with queens, with the range, with the ground range equal to that of a marine, people are finding that they are effective and just as effective, if not more effective, than Zerglings as a mineral dump, as they have a decent ground attack. They have a very good air attack, an anti-air of range of 7, which is actually better than a Hydralisk. They have more hit points than a Hydralisk, and they have spells. More importantly, they have Transfuse, and if that was the only spell they had in the late game, that's all they really need. Now, taking a look at the strategy so far, Wompbeatz is setting up his 2 base here, and from what I've seen from Binary Wompbeatz throughout the tournament, he is one of those, he's a Zerg player who is as fast as creep spread. He is a very slow, methodical Zerg player. He doesn't overexpand. He doesn't try to do too much. Now, if you take a look at what Select's doing, Select at this stage is pretty much doing what a standard Terran player should. He got up his expansion, he got up 1 racks into 3 racks double gas, all very standard sorts of play. This standard sort of play, you know, both players are pretty much like, you know what, I know what's happening, I know what's going on, I know what you're gonna do, I know what I'm gonna do, and Select should have a very strong unit composition. Now, things, as this game progresses and as this game continues, I'll bring up the Loss tab, and I'm going to showcase the Loss tab just a little bit more, because every race has a very strong slow push. Siege tanks, Marines, Marauders, Vikings, Medivacs for Terran, Mothership, you know, Death Ball, you know, also a very slow push throughout, you know, Rings of Liberty so far. Zerg players have had, okay, I'm going to attack you over here with fast-moving units, and I'm going to attack over here with fast-moving Mutalisks, then attack with Roaches who are on creep that move almost as fast as Hellions. I'm going to be everywhere at once. Zerg is also going to develop a new strategy with Queens that is their slow push, and I'll be showcasing that for you in this matchup here. I know a little bit of a spoiler, but then again, this is a little bit more of analysis for you Zerg players out there who want to be able to capitalize and make the most use out of the new queens. Roach is now going to be coming in, and this is more of a be honest pressure. You can see that there is a good amount of roaches here. The roaches are just going to simply make their way in, deal some damage, go after that one particular bunker. Perhaps they could have even come down over here, attack the supply depots while staying out of range from the bunker, and that would be enough for some SCVs to repair, things like that. SCV now just going to sit in this position, making sure that no more roaches are coming in. On top of that, a lot of SCVs are currently not mining, so this little, aggression by Wompbeatz did deal some economic damage as we now finally see him take up his third base. And it isn't early. It isn't, say, like the 4-minute or 5-minute mark that some Zerg players are really aggressive in taking. An 8-minute third base is almost slow in terms of the current meta, but very, very safe, knowing that you can defend it. The timing on this attack was so that the roaches could lay down a bit of pressure while the hatchery is currently being built. Alright, here we go. Evolution chamber are now being placed down, so double evos in order to get those upgrades. Meanwhile, we are going into level 1 armor upgrades. We should be getting an engineering bay and an armory as well. As Select, it looks like he's going to be going for heavy bio play, now getting that reactor on that starport. Marines are here, Marauders are here as well. We are going to have the barracks now lift off as command center being placed here. I thought for a second I saw the wireframe of another command center here. Must have been moved it down over here. So far things are pretty good. Select, Wompbeatz, pretty even. Select getting a little bit supply blocked, being forced to call down a supply drop in order to macro up more units as the Marines now do a move out. So this is huge. This one roach at this Zelnaga tower going to spot this army come down. And now Wompbeatz is going to be, you know what, I know where you are, and I'm going to take this time to attack. You cannot have that many units out here. Your timing is so that you should have medevacs right about now. So here we go. The supply depot, or this one bunker, just going to get taken down in a matter of seconds. Medevac is now making their way over, and the roaches are just able to make their way in, get in some easy shots, easy damage. All the SCVs are now trying to mineral path their way back in. And now without a front door here, things are going to be a little bit dicey for Select. Select is going to end up losing a fair amount of workers. Already down to 11 workers killed. The Marines and the Marauders are going to clean this up. But this was a very important attack by Wompbeatz. Wompbeatz able to do that slow pressure play, attack while the Marines and the Marauders are away. And that's going to allow him to get some spine crawlers for defense. Defense, very, very important. We're also going to see the Banelings now come in. I don't believe that the Banelings have movement speed upgrades. No, they don't. So these Banelings are just going to try to suicide as we now see another aggressive push, now with simply Zerglings. Fast-moving units forcing these Marines and these Marauders to not engage, and that is allowing Wompbeatz to really capitalize on his drone advantage. 59 to 42, as we now see him go into 6 extractor play. At some point, I do expect to see a macro hatch. Perhaps it will be placed down here, or is it already here? A new macro hatch already placed down in the main base. So we're going to be running on 4 hatcheries on 3 bases. Baneling still running around. Marines and the Marauders able to actually shoot up onto the high ground now. And the Marines and the Marauders here are going to try to clean up. Oh, a beautiful pickup here as the Banelings are going to try to come down this ramp. And some splash damage is being dealt to Marines. Some do get taken down. There is pretty much a full medevac. But what can these medevacs really do? The medevacs are full, but with creep tumors, all of these units are able to move around the map so quickly. Select being very aggressive, taking this forward third base, and this allows a Terran player to not be as defensive. Now, this is one of those questions that I always ask Terran players: why not place a planetary fortress here? And this is one of those issues where if it was your 4th base, you would definitely place a planetary fortress, but because it's your 3rd, you end up placing an additional orbital command. Then why not place the orbital command here? Well, you also want that forward position so that you're actually expanding and moving towards your opponent's base. Your attacks and your follow-throughs are a bit easier, and you can defend and retreat back to your base much more quickly, as opposed to being forced to run all the way back here. Now, so far, 1 Marauder in a medevac. that medevac pretty much goes, you know what, I'm very sure that nothing, that this one Marauder isn't going to do anything. So the medevac giving me the thumbs up saying, you know what, yeah, we're just going to head back home and enjoy life once more, as opposed to dropping off a Marauder straight up inside a Zerg facility or a Zerg base. 2-2 upgrades coming in, 2-2 Zerg upgrades coming in on both sides. Pathogen glands now being added as a changeling quickly getting shot down there. The changeling, yeah, always very, very interesting when they die. They just like spew over. We are teching into tier 3. So after a delayed tech to tier 2, we are now going into tier 3. And Wompbeatz is also taking up this additional base here. Most likely Wompbeatz wants this for the additional gas more than anything else. Select's going, you know what? I can do better. I'm going to expand as well. And this is right now a very, very good situation for Select. Select has the units. He has the supply advantage. He has the army composition advantage, more gas, more minerals, and his economy is actually better. So he's winning in terms, the only situation where he's not currently winning is he's not winning in terms of tech. He's winning in terms of economy. He's winning in terms of army. He just isn't winning in terms of tech, as we are now going to see Infestors and Broodlords coming out as we are now going into that Greater Spire. Select has a bunch of reactors here. He's going to be able to train up a lot of Marines. But last time I checked, Marines do not do well against Banelings. So as long as Wompbeatz is able to train up a lot of Zerglings and then get a lot of Banelings, also utilizing those Infestors with fungal growth, these Marines are simply all going to get destroyed. Banelings simply destroying here as the siege tanks of Select, doing a great job with staggering in the position. And this is that slow push that I was talking about from Terran. Terran, a couple Marauders. These Marauders are dealing about, what, 24 damage a second, simply pummeling away at this hatchery. 60 damage, or 60 some odd damage, taking down this hatchery. The hatchery may get transfused a little bit. No, the Zerglings are now trying to chase. It doesn't look like it will be effective, and now Zerglings are going to come back in once more. But still, the Marauders getting healed up and doing a great job. This is going to actually work out well, but oh, a fungal growth goes down. And these three Marauders look like they will not. Oh, one of the Marauders does stay alive, and now in comes the Queens. Corruptors are in play. The hatchery will get sniped down there. No additional gas whatsoever. Select with a 40 supply advantage and currently controlling the course of the game, but we are now going into 9 Corruptors. Corruptors obviously means that we will be transitioning into some very, very heavy Broodlord play. And it is now up to Select to figure out, yes, he is going to be going into those Vikings. Let's take a look, and I'm just going to bring up the losses tab. So far, Zerg lost about 1,200 additional resources, and that is going to end up losing even more. Zerglings and Banelings now trying to make their way in. The Baneling splashes do somewhat hit, dealing us a fair amount of damage, but so far it is still a 1,600 resource advantage by Select. There's some fungal growth, now being able to trade energy for units, and we are still going to see more and more attacking. Perhaps we're going to get another fungal growth here, but now in comes these Broodlords, and this is where the counterattack can really begin for Zerg. Zerg, at this point, he doesn't want to be at max supply. He wants to have room to train up these expensive Broodlords. Broodlords are for supply, and that means that Wompbeatz has plenty of room for them, can get perhaps 10 Broodlords if he wants, and Select decides, you know what, I'm trying to siege my opponent for far too long. He's just going to come back at me. Let me regroup, and I will come back with more Vikings, more ground units, more anti-air units, and we'll see what Wompbeatz can do. What is Wompbeatz follow-up going to be? So far, it looks like it is going to be 3-3 Broodlings, as Corruptors were trying to take down this medevac here. Marines and the Marauders once again pushing in here. No hatchery, so Select is currently running on, or should be able to run up on 4 bases compared to his opponent's 3. SCV is now making their way down over here to this 3 o'clock expansion location, and Broodlings just putting in a lot of pressure, and Select being forced to pull back here. And you can see how effective these Broodlings are. Basically one shot completely takes down the siege tank, completely takes down that Marauder, and now we also have a planetary fortress here by Select. Select is going to be very defensive. Perhaps we'll see auto-sec tracking and tearing building armor. Those are both very effective against Zerg, as Broodlings have a very difficult time trying to take down a planetary fortress with 5 armor. Now, Vikings are still being trained here. 7 Broodlord cocoons now being added. We are 4 bases to 3 against a Zerg. Zerg never wants to be behind in bases. They don't even want to be even in bases. They normally want to be up in bases. Coming down over here, we see a Doom drop coming in, but with so many spine crawlers, this massive medevac drop is going to be forced to pull back. 3 spine crawlers. The spine crawlers, perhaps with a lot of Zerg Queen support. And speaking of Zerg Queens, I'm sure you guys are noticing this. There are currently 4 Queens being trained at a time. More on that a little bit later, as 4 Queens are better than 8 Zerglings in most situations, unless you're trying to do a run by and that Queen is just like kind of moonwalking and taking her sweet time to get there. Now, Select opening up this middle path, and this is something that Select wants to do in order to make perhaps a faster drop. Queens are now coming to engage Marines and Marauders. A massive drop coming in. Queens are going to get taken down very easily. Zerg's now making their way over. And one of the benefits for Queens against a Terran army is that before, medevacs never really had to worry about getting taken down. There was no true anti-air. But with the sheer number of Queens, you count this, 7 Queens here. None of these medevacs may be able to survive. Broodlords are not going to survive, as we now see another massive push coming in by Select. Select taking the opportunity while the units are away to attack that front door. This Doom drop does get cleaned up. Let's take a look at the losses. If we are still slightly higher by Zerg, but things are actually going well for Wompbeatz. Wompbeatz is only down by 300 resources, as we now see the siege tanks and the Vikings looking to pull back once more. 58 drones, 72 SCVs. And now take a look at the army composition. 10 or 11,000 in terms of total resources compared to, I believe, 7,000. And we are still getting more Queens onto the field. Currently sitting on 14 Queens. We should be getting up into 17 Queens. And 17 Queens, absolutely huge. And the Queens are also going to have weapons upgrade. The Queens are going to be able to deal 10 damage per attack, since it is a double attack. And how much damage are they going to be able to truly deal? Select now going into the Terran standard follow-up, getting in a lot of orbital commands. He can start sacrificing SCVs. But let's take a look at this massive push in the center portion. Let's take a look at the losses. Right now, we are about even. And here we go. Infestors now making their way in. There are siege tanks and Thors. Broodlings are now trying to come down. These siege tanks cannot siege for the additional rain. There are so many corruptors. And just see what these Queens can do. In terms of energy efficiency, Queens with Transfuse are better than Ghosts. And that means that is better than Ghost even against psionic units. So far, all of a sudden in this one battle, Wompbeatz doesn't lose very much at all. The Infestors, the Queens, are doing this very slow push. Siege tanks don't even counter the Queens, as they are not armored all too much. Broodlings are now just dropping in from the sky, as the Broodlings are just taking down all of the orbital commands that Select has built. So far a 3,000, now 4,000 resource difference, and it's continuing. These Broodlords are upgraded 0-1. They don't even have attack upgrades, just pure armor upgrades to stay alive a little bit longer. The Broodlings are dealing the majority of the damage. They are 3-3, dealing 7 damage per attack, and each Broodlord drops 2 Broodlings in that initial attack. So that is huge DPS here, as the Vikings can't take down the Corruptors. The Corruptors are constantly getting healed, and the Queens are also there as well, so the Queens can act as anti-air support. Down over here, you can see more Broodlings are just dropping in, taking down all of the production buildings, and now these observers, or these overseers, if they wanted to, could start contaminating some of these buildings as well, to make sure that no more units are being trained at all. Overseers could also drop in a whole bunch of changelings. Invested Terrans now going up onto the high ground to reveal sight. Infested Terrans also upgraded as well, sharing upgrades with the Queens. And they are going to have very, very high DPS, dealing 9 damage per attack, more effective than your standard Marine as well. Alright, so the Queens now coming in. You can see this massive push. Take a look at the resource tab, and it is a 10,000 resource difference between these two armies. Wompbeatz has not lost very much in this attack force, and this is that slow push with the Queens that I was talking about. The Queens with equal range. You can see the Marines are trying to go up against those Corruptors. The Corruptors are diving in against the Vikings, and they're not taking that much damage. There are still 9 Corruptors in that group. And even with Marines and Thors trying to take them down, the Broodlings are now pushing their way in. And 3-3 Broodlings against Thors, that is just a punishment right there, as those Broodlings deal so much damage to those Thors. We are now at a 13,000 resource difference between these two lost tabs. And Wompbeatz still has plenty of Corruptors to use and turn into Broodlords. So far, 11 Broodlords still making their way around. We are going to be getting a drop here, but this is a whole bunch of Spine Crawlers to act as defense. Also, lifting up, not a very good idea against this Corruptor army, as the Orbital Command gets shot down in a matter of seconds. It is not even a massive unit, but still taking a lot of damage. We now see a 15,000 resource difference. The Marines trying to clean up this hatchery off over here. Not that many workers killed, and this is pretty much a base that is not needed. You can see that Wompbeatz is not doing that much mining at this base. This base hasn't had that much mining going on. The third base here, or this base here, and this base also pretty much mined out, as we now see a defensive nuke. A nuke now being utilized in order to make sure that units don't come in from that location here. It most likely will simply just get canceled, as the Orbital Command doesn't want to take the damage. Nope, it does take the damage, but nothing really lost there at all. Corruptors now looking to push their way in. Ghosts are not a good counter to all of these Broodlords any longer. The Broodlords are not psionic. Broodlings now making their way in, taking down multiple units here. And what is going to happen? These queens still have a massive amount of energy, able to constantly do transfuses. Broodlords now making their way over, going to be able to shut down Orbital Command after Orbital Command, a 16,000 resource difference. And Wompbeatz, even though he has less resources mined, may actually, looks like he'll actually win this, since he is just constantly trading energy for units. Broodlords essentially generate their own units with those broodlings, and that is just a very good example of trading, I guess. Time for units is a better way to talk about it. And whenever you can trade time for units, that is always good. The queens here, with a massive number of transfusions, can save all of these Broodlords, 10 times over, it appears, as the Broodlords can get 2 transfuses and heal back up completely. So these Broodlords are still making their way in. You can take a look at mining down over here. There is more mined out of this space than this space here. So if you have any doubts, Select really has mined more resources. It's just that Zerg is able to trade time for units right now. So the Corruptors constantly getting healed back up. Now pulling away. The Marines trying to engage. The Corruptors do have level 1 armor, but the Marines have better better weapons upgrades. But we are now going into 2-2 upgrades for these units. So now we have 2-2 upgrades on the queens, or 2-3 on the queens. Meanwhile, the Corruptors are 0-2. The Corruptors now have, I believe, 4 armor, minimizing the damage that they're taking from these Vikings, from 16 down to 12. So from 32 damage down to 24. That is huge, as the Vikings are now being forced to pull away. The Corruptors do have better movement speed, just a little bit less range, as we are now continuing this fight here. So many Broodlords on the field. 12 Broodlords, 21 queens. And let's take a look here. This one Planetary Fortress currently sitting up to 73 kills. And the Planetary Fortress is right now just attempting to take down queens. The queens are going to get taken down here. And you got to remember, Select is just repairing this Planetary Fortress like mad. This Planetary Fortress, as soon as it is lost, every resource spent here will end up getting revealed. And now there is not even any more Infestors in this group. Wompbeatz still has 9 queens. No more Infestors, just a whole bunch of queens and a whole bunch of Broodlords. Otherwise, that fungal growth would have taken it down. The Broodlings still dealing a large amount of damage here. The queens now trying to join in on the fight, trying to take it down. You can see the Planetary Fortress has 5 building armor. 5 building armor, massive repairs by SCVs. The Broodlings perhaps should start taking down some of the SCVs instead. And if they were able to do that, this Planetary Fortress will not hold. Already up to 147 kills. We see some long distance mining coming in from Wompbeatz, as he's forced to do that little bit of a walk of shame, but he doesn't care at this point. He has the larger army by far. You can take a look at his army. Even though he has supply to give, he is currently sitting at about, 13,000 resources in terms of his army composition. These queens dealing so much damage, and as the Planetary Fortress gets lower and lower, we should perhaps start to get into some burn damage. And yes, the Planetary Fortress now quickly falling. The SCVs unable to heal up in time, as the queens are now almost double lined up to take down this Planetary Fortress. The queens now can engage. Broodlords going after those Marines instead. And once this Planetary Fortress does go down, it may be a 3,000 to 4,000 resource building. 246 kills on this planetary fortress, 252, 254, 257, and that number is still just continuing to grow. All right, what is Select's follow-up? Select, actually, let's keep this planetary fortress. Is it going to fall? Yes, it is going to fall, and yes, it was a 3,000 resource building into constantly repairing it, as we're now going to see the Queens just finish up the main base here. Marines now trying to go after, unable to fight against here, but there could be a nuke. No nuke available. Infestors are now coming in. Mass infested Terrans with a fungal growth, and there's the GG. Select unable to fend off this massive Zerg Queen Corruptor, the Zerg Queen Corruptor Broodlord army with Infestors. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed this game.